Hello ladies and gentlemen, this is Mr. Killshot here, and today we're going to be doing an old-fashioned 22 shootout. Because the best kind of fire is a rim fire, just like the best kind of job I don't know where I'm going with this. But anyway, today we're going to be putting up the Remington 552 Speedmaster up against the Remington 597 Heavy Barrel, trying to figure out who's going to come out on top, and whether or not the old guard can hang with the new. Can the boomer hang with the millennial? Well, let's find out. On top of the 552, we have a BSA scope, 4x16. This scope is a very low quality scope. It is not a true 16 times magnification, and it gets blurry at high distances or magnifications. Besides that, we have the Remington 597 Heavy Barrel Edition. This gun is also stock as well, but it does include an aftermarket charging handle and a T-Eagle 1.2x6 magnification LPVO on top. Below that, we have a standard bipod. This video is going to be split up into two parts, the first being hitting a steel target about the size of a hand at 50 and 100 yards, and the second part being a grouping test at both 50 and 100 yards between both rifles. I did this because in my opinion, a good 22 pistol should be able to hit a squirrel-sized target, perhaps even headshots, at around a 90% success rate at 50 yards, and at 100 yards I would say at about a 60 to 80% success rate. So here we'll be starting with the Remington 552 Speedmaster. This gun is an excellent gun. I've enjoyed owning it very much. My gun here specifically is one of the later models that comes updated with the cheek weld. I believe they started updating them in the late 80s or 90s as optics started becoming more common. Besides that, it comes with a dovetail mount, so you'll need dovetail rings if you want to mount an optic onto this rifle. It also did come with rear and front sights, but the previous owner removed them. I like mounting optics, so I'm leaving this the way it is. It's a much cleaner look in general. Besides that, the stock is very good. It's very ergonomic. Me, I traditionally prefer pistol grips, as my hand gets kind of sore and worn when holding traditional rifle stocks, shooting for a long time. But with this rifle, that does not seem to be an issue. It's not too thick where your hand goes and where your palm goes there, so it's actually extremely comfortable. I believe this gun was refinished upon me purchasing it. It looked completely unfired, and when I was firing it, just some general wear and tear from firing it appeared on the rifle. So that's why I say it was probably finished. The stock was perfect, besides one chip on the forehand. During my time with this rifle, unfortunately, I did mess up the stock. One day I was shooting an SKS, and the shell was reflecting all over the stock without me realizing it. So it's not as good as it was when I first got it, but my plan with this rifle is to shoot it for about a year, and then get it completely refinished, and probably just hang it up for a while. One thing I did manage to find out about this rifle is you can actually buy aftermarket Boyd stocks for it, which I think is kind of doing the rifle injustice, giving its heritage, but it'll be pretty cool, and in my opinion, it'll be a unicorn. And now we'll move on to the Remington 597. So this gun is honestly a sniper. This is the type of gun that makes you want to start a squirrel extermination business. I have much more confidence when shooting this gun and find that I can acquire targets much quicker than the 552. This gun, I think the heavy barrel makes a big difference. And also it has a very unique feature of having dual guide rods in the bolt. Perhaps one of the smoothest bolts I've ever manipulated in a 22 rifle. And unlike the other popular option, the Ruger 1022, it does have a last round bolt hole open. The ergonomics of this gun are not too bad, but it's a bit thicker where your palm goes there. So after long hours of shooting, or many rounds, I do find to get a bit of a pain in my palm there, but it's nothing too significant, and it's usually only after many rounds. Besides that, I really enjoy this rifle. I've had a great time owning and shooting it, and I recommend it to anybody who's in the market for a 22 rifle, especially a semi-automatic. Me personally, I didn't want to do a build, and upon watching many reviews, the Remington 597 usually came out on top almost every time. And now we're going to move on to the 100-yard shots. So here I was shooting at night. I wouldn't be able to include too much footage because after a certain point it was getting really dark and I couldn't really see the targets. Even at this point I was having a hard time seeing the targets. It was my first time having to use illumination in the field, and the BSA scope, the illumination was not that good. It would kind of get a bit too bright and wash the targets out, especially at 100 yards. So I think I used at the minimal settings for the BSA. And this was my first shot, so it took me a while to get used to it. Afterwards, I was hitting a bit more frequent, but it still was not that good. The Remington 5.52 does shift the point of impact of the bullets, which is why even at 50 yards I wasn't hitting at 100% success rate, and this will be much more visible in the grouping shots, as you will see later on. And now we're moving on to the Remington 5.97 at 100 yards. Right off the bat, the 5.97 performed a lot better. The T-Eagle scope here had more frequent hash marks right below the crosshairs, so it was a bit easier to pinpoint where I needed to hit the target at 100 yards, as both these scopes were both zeroed in at 50 yards. The BSA scope, on the other hand, I had to pinpoint in between two dots underneath the crosshairs, so it was a bit more tricky, but that's not the reason of the performance was worse than the 597. Other factors as well. Keep in mind both these guns throughout this entire test, I was using Blazer ammunition. Would I have been using more premium ammunition or better ammunition? I'm sure both these guns would have fared better, and the results might have been slightly different. Besides that, the performance of these guns are both very good. I've had these guns for about 5 to 6 months. The 5.52 jams less than any other rimfire rifle I've ever owned. It's very impressive in that regard. I did not clean that gun at all until finishing the filming of this video. The 5.97, on the other hand, I've cleaned about 3 to 4 times in between that time. I find this gun does jam a lot when it gets dirty, so it's something to be mindful of. And just always make sure that you're keeping up with the cleaning. And that pretty much concludes the footage and filming at 100 yards here. If you have any questions or inquiries regarding any of these two guns, please feel free to leave them in the comments and I'll see what I can do. Once again, both these guns are great. I would recommend both of them. If you want something with a bit of character and you already have a precision build, it's a very good idea or worth the time to look into some older model guns such as the 5.52. Other options include many of the German models, speaking semi-automatic here. And in my opinion, it's well worth it to have some old school cool in your collection. Besides that, we're going to move on to the grouping results at 50 and 100 yards. Alright, so let's start off with the 50-yard comparisons. 50-yard groups, sorry. So starting off with the Remington 5.97 at 50 yards. So as you can see here, we're shooting very good at 50 yards. Pretty much all within an inch for the most part. Very, very good performance here. I only took 3 groups for this one because right off the bat, I already know what time it is. Looking very good. Okay, so for the 5.52, I had to do it a couple times here because I wasn't getting the kind of groups that I was experiencing with the 5.97, so I'll give the 5.52 a fighting chance. For all of these shots, I was aiming for bullseye. And you can see here, not as good as the 5.97. I did give it a lot of opportunity. These are the results right here. Kind of all over the place. Not the worst though. If you're aiming for a squirrel at 50 yards, safe to say you'd pretty much get the hit. I continued after that just to try and see if I could match, at least 1 inch or something close to that. But as you see here, was not able to get them all within a 1 inch square. So I just chalked it up and call it a day for 50 yards. After this, we have 100 yards. So I did 100 yards shooting during the nighttime, but I would not count those results because it was pretty much guesswork. But here we do see 100 yards during the daytime, and with the Remington 5.97, I managed to get 2 inches. 2 inches. I didn't do too many groups during the daytime with the 5.97, but that's probably about as good as I was gonna get. I'm not too sure about the wind conditions and that kind of stuff, but that's what I was able to get done here. And the 5.52 was a bit trickier, it's a bit all over the place. So we got a couple groups here. Let me just flip that around. So I'll include some footage of it, but the Remington 5.52 Speedmaster, it would always shift, and I'm not too sure what to attribute it to. So when shooting this gun, I did notice that the spring inside the charging handle there, it has a very strong spring. So every time that charging handle
goes back and forth, it does cause a bit of momentum and the rifle to shake a little bit. I didn't notice this until the end of my results, basically, so that could be one factor why these groups are kind of all over the place. Keep in mind this is also Blazer ammunition, so maybe if I was using better ammunition, I could have got better results, but for this test here, I just wanted to keep it with a cheap, consistent ammo that everybody is used to and can relate to. This is the first group I got, so the first two shots I believe were either these two or these two, and then the next two shots were these two right here. So the fact that the next two shots shifted both relatively the same place makes me think it's either something with the barrel or the ammo, because if I moved or flinched, I doubt I'd flinch in the same spot 2 times in a row. And it was kind of happening with the other shots I would shoot, especially at 100 yards. So this one is 9 centimeters, 3.5 inches for a 100-yard group. This last one, I did a 5-yard group, but I kind of wanted to see what was going on, so I did another one, and this one stayed relatively close to the original grouping. And once again, I was aiming for bullseye here, so if you're aiming at a target for 100 yards, yeah, it's safe to say you'd probably hit it, you know. So that's about the size there of the group. You're still pretty much hitting at 100 yards for small targets. This was the second group here, so we have 3.7 inches, 0.07 inches. This one was kind of consistent for the most part. I just call that maybe one flyer. And this was the best one out of the bunch here. So we're looking at 6.5 centimeters, 2.5 inches. And yeah, these were the daytime shots. And that was pretty much the best I could do with this rifle with Blazer ammunition in pretty decent weather conditions. And last but not least, we're going to go through some groups here. So these were taken at night and it was very dark at this time, so it's pretty much guesswork, so I'm not going to include these as accurate or consistent results. So you can see here at nighttime with a 5.97 aiming for bullseye once again, and you know I'm hitting there pretty good at 100 yards at night. Not too bad for the 5.97. Once again aiming for bullseye with a 5.97. I'm pretty close there, satisfied with that. 5.97 again. The marking there is bullseye where I was aiming. Once again, I got 2 shots in there, pretty close. Not too bad. 5.52 on the other hand, aiming for bullseye right here. Not getting close at all. 5.52 at night, aiming for bullseye. Not getting close to the bullseye at all. And so these were the nighttime shots. Once again, I was just doing some guesswork because I very vague to see the target was extremely dark. And those are pretty much the grouping results, guys.
Okay, so I'm going to finish off the video with some final thoughts about the Remington 597 here. As you can see here, this is the aftermarket charging handle. I managed to source this from a gentleman in Alberta. The stock charging handle was very flimsy, and when shooting it, it would kind of wiggle and get loose. And it was kind of annoying me, especially when chambering new rounds. It would stay in place, but it was just kind of annoying. So this gun does not have too much aftermarket parts as compared to the 1022, but there's still sufficient amount of stuff out there. So you can get a lot of upgrades made by the company called Volquartsen, I believe. Stuff like extractors, triggers. I believe M Carbo also does make a trigger kit for this rifle here. There's also a few chassis you can get. You can go with a cheap Pro Mag chassis, or you can get an Archangel one that's kind of like a tactical AR style chassis. Here I'm going over the trigger length of pull here. It's one thing I dislike about this rifle, and one thing I would change, but besides that, it's a great rifle. And yeah, that covers it, guys. Thanks for watching, and take care.